I've been covering, and Status Quo has been reporting before anyone else was covering this, the fact that the primary rigging is already going on. If you recall, several weeks ago, I started sounding the alarm that in New York, which has the third largest amount of pledged delegates up for grabs in the entire Democratic primary, California is number one. Texas is number two, and New York is right behind Texas. I think Texas at the moment has 228 pledged delegates up for grabs, and New York has 224. So you don't have to live in New York for this story to matter to you. If you're a progressive, if you want Bernie Sanders, per se, to have a fair shot, this is an important story, because if they're rigging or trying to rig the New York primary, then that's going to probably make it very difficult for Bernie Sanders to win the primary. So, of course, they rig the primaries in many different ways. They rig the primary in many different ways. They rig the primary. I mean, the media is rigging the primary every day. I mean, I tweeted out and did a video earlier, MSNBC should just declare as a super PAC for Elizabeth Warren now. Just don't bother pretending to be objective. You're not. They are propping up Warren, so is CNN. So they rigged the primary that way. But another way they rigged the primary is in New York. If you're unfamiliar, New York ranks 50 out of 50. 50 out of 50 states in how early you need to register as a Democrat to vote in the primary 6 months later. The primary in New York is going to be in April of next year. The registration for that primary, if you are not a Democrat now and you want to register, you have 22 days from now to register as a Democrat, or you're not going to be able to vote in that primary. That is blinking red lights, voter suppression. There is no reason on God's green earth that you should have to register 6 months before a presidential primary. Most people are not paying attention. Most people don't know when the registration deadline is. Most people are not plugged into presidential politics until probably maybe Iowa. I mean, most people are not us. We live and breathe this stuff every day. Most people are just trying to, put food on the table for their kids, work, take their kids to and from soccer practice, whatever it is. Most people are not clued in that October 11th is the deadline. It is suppressive, and it is meant to protect the establishment because it suppresses more people from being eligible to vote. It suppresses, currently in New York, you might be registered Green Party, you might be registered Working Families Party, you might be unaffiliated, you might be registered as a Republican. And as the campaign progresses, you might be attracted to voting, let's say, for Bernie Sanders. Let's say even Elizabeth Warren, if you want to play devil's advocate. But if you don't if you don't register by October 11th, you're not going to be able to do it. So it disenfranchises many, many, many people. So I've been sounding the alarm about this because, frankly, a bill passed in June that moved the deadline from October to February. October 11th is the deadline. The bill that passed the New York State Assembly, which is the House in New York, and the New York Senate passed in June. So it's just sitting around collecting dust. But I was told today when I reached out to a state lawmaker's office that the governor's office has said the governor has not requested the bill yet to be signed. Well, what exactly is this governor, who is a Joe Biden supporter, who has, but other reports came out, he has opened up his entire donors network to Joe Biden, who has called Joe Biden Santa Claus, who is BFF with Joe Biden. What exactly is the governor waiting for? There's 22 days left. Is he waiting for a bus? Is he waiting for God to come down and tell him it's okay? Is he waiting for his donors to allow him? What is Andrew Cuomo waiting for? There is no reason not to sign this bill unless you want to suppress the vote. The corporate media hasn't been covering the New York primary, and frankly, I don't see many independent media screaming about this. So, a bill passed the Senate. Before I get to what Bernie Sanders' campaign has done, I want to remind you that I did an interview a couple weeks ago with a state senator. Here's what he had to say about this.
Right, so October 11th, as it stands, is the deadline. He still hasn't signed the bill. And we came together and passed this legislation based on the last few years. In the last presidential election cycle, where thousands of people felt like their voices weren't heard because because of this outdated deadlines and our outdated voting registration system. So we've not only this, but we looked at a number of different ways to improve that. And instead of embracing every one of those bills like he's been stalling and not moving, and instead what he's doing is going around and talking about consolidating the elections and totally trying to change and own a different narrative, knowing that we're out of session, and knowing that like this has nothing to do with the bills that we passed. And I think, the reality is like we have a governor who's endorsed, who's favoring another candidate for president, and I think him and people who are aligned with them are doing whatever they can to favor the outcome toward that candidate, which happens to be in this case Joe Biden.
So that was State Assemblyman Henry Kim a couple weeks ago. I interviewed him because to me, this is blinking red lights for election rigging. There is no reason. The bill has passed. We're not talking about getting a bill passed. The bill has passed. The bill has passed, and this governor, who is a supporter of Joe Biden, won't sign it because he knows if more people are allowed to vote, in this primary, it's not going to help Joe Biden, and might not help some other establishment candidates. It might definitely help Bernie Sanders. Suppression 101. So I've been screaming and hollering about this for weeks. I don't want to say I had anything to do with Bernie's campaign. I haven't communicated with Bernie's campaign about this, but it just so happens that after Status Quo was on the beat for weeks about this, I didn't see any other independent networks talking about this. Bernie's campaign is now on offense. Bernie Sanders supporters complained in 2016 that the New York strict party registration deadline locked many of them out of the presidential primary because state voters must be signed on as Democrats 6 months before Election Day. Yes, in 2020, Sanders' campaign is determined to avoid a repeat. Sanders' campaign manager, Faiz Shakir, sent a letter to the Democratic National Committee on Thursday urging it to demand that New York governor approves legislation to extend the state's voter registration deadline, which is less than a month away. Quote, in 2016, countless voters across the state of New York were disenfranchised by the state's arcane and inexcusable early party affiliation deadline. Countless voters whose first attempt to engage with the Democratic Party saw them turned away, Shakir wrote. Sanders performed well among independents in other states in 2016, but he lost the New York primary, which is closed off to voters who are not Democrats, by 16 points to Hillary Clinton, who represented the state in the Senate for 8 years. This article left out that tiny little fact that 200,000 voters were purged off of the rolls that were registered as Democrats. We won't mention that. The Sanders campaign said that the New York Democratic Party has agreed to a plan allowing any voter who changed their party registration by February 14th, 2020, to vote in the primary. The New York State Legislature passed a bill this summer to let voters switch their party registration by that date, but Cuomo has not signed it. A top Cuomo aide said that the governor intends to sign the bill into law. The DNC did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Quote, the current deadline to change isn't until October 11th, and the bill hasn't been sent to us yet, but we fully intend to sign it as this was something that we and the legislature all agree on, said Cuomo's senior advisor, Rich Azzopardi. Shakir called on the DNC to consider appropriate sanctions if Cuomo does not sign the bill. Yeah, that's bullshit. The bill has been sent to the governor. I was told that the governor has not asked for the bill yet. So the state assembly, the state senate, has been trying to get this bill over. I've talked to many people in the know in New York politics. They've been trying to send the bill to this governor. He has not signed it. What is so difficult? It's literally walking the paper over to the governor's mansion, plopping it on his desk, him putting his John Hancock on it. Sorry, I've never worked in politics. It's not more complicated than that. And other bills are not as time sensitive as this one, because this one is a deadline of October 11th, which is 22 days from now. So I'm sorry, but nobody is going to tell me, Andrew Cuomo, if pressure is not going to be put on him, he ain't going to sign that bill. because he does not want to give more voters and more currently non-Democrats a chance to vote. And by the way, let's take away all naivete that the DNC does not have a hand in this. The DNC has a hand in this too. This is, again, New York. Why it should matter to you whether you live there or not. New York has the third largest number of pledged delegates up for grabs. So, if Bernie Sanders were able to eke out a victory in New York, it's a big deal. Currently, he is 7 points down to Joe Biden. 7 points down 6 months before a primary? Damn good. That's the latest poll in New York. I think Biden was at 22. Warren, I think, was 17. Sanders, 15. So Bernie is down 7 to Biden and down 2 to Warren. That's a good position to be in just 6 months after the primary. But what's not going to help Bernie is if this deadline kicks in. So I got something to say about all this. The bottom line is, where is the outcry from progressives in New York and progressives around the country? You could do the math. There's a lot of delegates up for grabs in New York, and frankly, I'm just keeping it real. If this registration deadline stays October 11th, it's going to be difficult for Bernie Sanders to win New York. And I'll tell you why. New York is a traditionally more establishment Democrat type of place. So is especially New York City. A lot of wealthy people in New York City, in Manhattan in particular. Bernie Sanders won every single county in New York other than the New York City. He won upstate. He won every county against Hillary Clinton in 2016 other than New York City. But New York City, winning New York City, you're going to win the primary. So for Bernie Sanders to have a chance, that's why his campaign is going on the offense. I'll humbly take a little credit for it because we've been the only one talking about this in the media. I did communicate once with somebody from their campaign. I won't talk about it. Just asking them, are they doing anything about this deadline? Now we know the answer. Campaign manager Fez Shakir sent a letter to the DNC demanding that the governor is not the DNC, so the DNC can't boss him around, but the DNC could penalize New York, take away some of its delegates, take away some of its power. It has 224 delegates. The DNC does have the power to pull away some of those delegates, which takes away power from an individual state. If they don't do what's right, people elect the legislature, the assembly, and the state senate. They elect these individuals to speak for them. Well, these individuals passed a bill to avoid New York basically being the worst voter suppressor state in the country. Don't get me wrong, Republicans are way worse in terms of voter suppression. But this is voter suppression. There's no reason to have a deadline 6 months before a primary. Whether it hurts or helps Bernie Sanders is kind of irrelevant. It is voter suppression. You should want as many people to participate in elections as possible. And the Democrats, they sing a good tune about that nationally, but this is one of the big... Andrew Cuomo is known nationally, and this is the kind of crap he's pulling. So, bottom line, I'm not going to tell you what to do. All I can do is provide the information. 22 days, folks, till October 11th and that registration. If you are currently in New York, a Republican, Green Party, Working Families Party, not affiliate, you have 11 days. I believe for independents, you can register 25 days before. I'm pretty sure of that. If I'm wrong, somebody could correct me. info@statuscoup.com. But from the way I read it, independents could register 25 days before. However, everybody else, and there are potentials for Republicans to register to vote for Bernie. There are potential for Green Party to register as Democrat to vote for Bernie. Same thing with Working Families Party. So this is important. I just give you the information. You do what you want with it. But Andrew Cuomo's not going to do the right thing unless Andrew Cuomo feels an inferno right up his behind. I'm not talking violence, but I am talking pressure. So this is a very important story. This is how they rig elections, folks. It's happening right now. Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.